the ones that have taken a side, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation building. As we span the globe for voices from the diaspora and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
This land is our land now.
As the world turns on its axis, bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adapt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
We ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain.
Welcome to all of our viewers. I'm Nohar Singh, filling in as the host for Globespan 24/7. A platform that has been existing for 6 years, offering community service and all voices. The platform invites all political parties, civil and religious leaders to share their opinions and to address concerns. You can contact Globespan 24/7 by calling 631-782-8694, or you could email us at support@globespan24x7.com. Our topic tonight is election perspective, but just before we get into that, we want to spend the first 15 minutes or so to talk about some of the current news that's been hitting the airwaves. Our guest tonight is no other than Dr. Terence Campbell. You've known him, been on the program several times. Mr. GHK, and also we have Senior Counsel Timothy Jonas. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining the program tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah.
Okay, so we want to go to the airwaves, basically what has been transpiring in the past few days. And I know everyone wants to get in and talk about Amanza launching our parties and some of the developments that we have seen with some of the FC members maybe crossing over to the PNC APNU side. But we'll get there. 15, 20 minutes, we'll get there. I want to bring up the topics that has been priming the atmosphere within our political space, meaning that as we leading up into election, there are certain events that are unfolding and events that pretty much, and I call it priming because it kind of like brings a sort of a cloudiness in terms of a sense of infringing on what may be a civil pathway into election. So I want to talk about first about Baby Skello being arrested for what some people deemed as free speech, others deem as very offensive. As a matter of fact, particularly the Hindus, and certainly, for him to be placed in jail for that, there's multiple opinions. I was hoping to start the program tonight with either Dr. Campbell or Mr. GHK, but we will have to rely on Timothy Jonas being a senior counsel just to spend a minute or two to tell us the legality of it. And then the other part of your response, Tim, would be that Minister Priya Manik-Chan made some comments condemning the arrest in the sense, I'm using that word, and I probably would like you to comment on that as well. So just a minute or two on the legality side of it, and then what do you think about the comments from Minister Priya Manik-Chan?
Thanks, Noah. I'm glad you asked me about the legal side of it, rather than the moral side, the ethical side, or the fact that this man has been convicted in the court of public opinion by the social media experts without a trial. But I want to talk about the irony of this particular situation. This man said some reprehensible things. He published lyrics that were reprehensible. So you immediately have a tug of war. You have to ask yourself, on the one hand, well, what is freedom of speech and the importance of freedom of speech? And on the other hand, what are we going to do with this man for publishing this reprehensible material? And the irony is that the state in its wisdom, because I'm sure there was political interference, political involvement in the decision to prosecute, they decided to prosecute this man under an outdated act, an outdated offense that still exists on our law books, although it shouldn't. It dates back to the 1800s. They call it blasphemous libelous blasphemy. Now, that offense was created back in the 14, 15, 1600s, and it was a way to control people because the state and the church were closely intertwined. And the church used its influence to impose this law that made it punishable to blaspheme. And I was reading a lovely case from the 1700s where an Englishman was charged with the terrible offense of blasphemy, in that he said that the scriptures were fables and fairy tales, and that he preferred the Prophet Muhammad to the fake Jesus. And he was found guilty of blasphemy under the legislation then, and he was duly executed. They took his head off. And what people don't realize is that the offense of libelous blasphemy, historically, as we have inherited it, is designed to protect Christianity. Because let me tell you, every single religion, if you try to treat it equally, is blasphemous. The Muslims believe the Christians are going to hell. The Christians believe the Muslims are going to hell. Some Christian sects believe other Christian sects go into hell. And every time their preachers or their imams preach this from a pulpit, they are committing blasphemy against the other religions. So if you ask me my legal opinion, this act is specific to Christianity. It is not an offense under this act to bad talk Jews, Muslims, or Hindus, because the act and the judicial attention to the act back in the 17 and 1800s specifically goes to not denouncing not just the existence of God the Almighty, but the Trinity. And if you denounce the Trinity, then you're in trouble. But the Trinity, as you know, is only specific to Christianity. So the irony is they've held this man on a charge that has absolutely nothing to do with bad talking Hinduism. And they've done it in violation of his freedom of speech, which is his constitutional right. And the entire thing is ironic because they did it using another equally unfair act that is outdated and shouldn't be on the law books.
Right. And Tim, your opinion about, you just mentioned earlier in your response there that you feel the state move forward in prosecution, yes? Now you've seen Minister Priya Manik-Chan came out and made some statements about this, that the state, rather than charging someone and putting him in jail while other people are being freed, etc. What's your opinion about her statement? Is it the sense of political maturity? What's your sense about the statement she made?
I ask you to remember that Priya Manik-Chan is a lawyer. She's a trained lawyer. And
Right.
I am taking her statement in the context that this man was remanded without bail. That was inconceivable. I wonder what the magistrate was thinking. So I look at her statement in that context, that the question of whether you should be remanded without bail doesn't turn on if people like you or not. It turns on if you're a flight risk, if you're a danger to society, and if there's a chance you won't turn up on the day in question to face your charge and deal with the trial.
Yeah.
There was no question of that. He shouldn't have been remanded.
Yeah.
And I look at the minister's comments in that light.
Yeah. Dr. Campbell, I'm sure you're anxious to jump in on this. What's your opinion on this? And I believe APNU at PNC made a statement that Minister Priya Manik-Chan is crocodile tears, etc. Could you address both parts of it? Firstly, your opinion about, of course, Baby Skeller being in jail, and of course, Is it political maturity that we are seeing display here, or is it crocodile tears? What's your thoughts?
Noah, I'm a businessman, so I don't have a political lens with which I view every statement. I take the minister's comment. I'm starting with the minister's comment. I take the minister's comment on the remanding of baby Skello at face value. I was heartened by it because, as Tim said, and with which I agree, the prosecution has political overtones, and Minister Manik Chan is part of the political administration, and so in some ways, in speaking out against the remanding of baby Skello, she is also speaking out against her own administration. And I was heartened that not only Minister Manik Chan, but I am told, I didn't see it, but I'm told Attorney at Law Says Gonraj, who is an elections commissioner for the PPP, I am told, I didn't actually see the post, also spoke out against the remanding of baby Skello. So I won't describe it as crocodile tears. I mean, perhaps this was the bridge too far, or the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back for both of them. So I take it at face value. I too will condemn the remanding. I would say that I think it was an attempt to punish baby Skello. Let me say this. I see the remanding as an attempt to punish baby Skello without a trial, without hearing evidence. I don't think, like Tim, I don't believe that he should have been remanded to prison until July 2nd or whatever is the date that he has to appear in court again. And finally, let me also, at the same time, say that I found his comments or the matter that he published reprehensible, morally reprehensible. But there must be other ways. I think this was perhaps something better dealt with by the Ethnic Relations Commissions or some one of those other agencies, rather than prosecution for blasphemous libel.
Yeah. So Timothy Jonas and Dr. Campbell, the point I was trying to make there is that for the 59 years we have always seen party politics. And here we are seeing a sense, that's why I'm using the word political maturity. Is it something that whereby she just not in agreement of it, felt the onus on her to make those statements, and leading straight to Mr. GHK. Mr. GHK, Timothy Jonas mentioned this law came about from Christianity, etc. But that's way, in the past for us now. It's a law that applies to everyone, be it Hindu, Christian, or Muslims. And here we are having a situations where the Hindu community came out, condemned this.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Noah. The law does not apply to everyone. You don't take a law and apply it how you want to apply it. It applies how it is intended.
Which I would think that it would apply to everyone. Am I correct?
The law was imposed by the church. And the example I gave you of its application was someone who spoke against the Trinity. You can't take it now and adjust it to modern times and say, well, if you speak against any religion, you're breaking that law, because then you change the meaning of the law.
But in the context of today's world, you would say that if it's a blasphemy against Hinduism or a song with blasphemy against Christianity, it is in the context of a crime.
Why would you say that?
Because what's not right for one shouldn't be right for the other.
So you have reinterpreted it how you want to reinterpret it when the words are exactly the same for the past 200 years and had a completely different meaning.
But we are speaking in the context of Guyana today. We are speaking not 200 years ago.
The point that I made was that Christianity, by its definition, considers every other religion to be false. And therefore, every preacher who preaches from his pulpit is when he speaks of another religion, is labeling that religion. And the same applies for every religion, because each religion treats the other as false.
Yeah. So
It
Tim,
can't cut two ways.
I don't want to dial back and litigate the law when it was implemented. I really want to stick to within today's context. So going to Mr. GHK, Mr. G, Baby Skello was reprimanded, brought into ERC. He was placed before the courts. Now we understand he's on a bail. But let's just do a parallel to this, Mr. GHK. We had not baby, Mr. Vice Cartel. And from looking at the numbers that which he was offered for Trinidad and Tobago, 1.3 million US dollars, would give an assumption that that's about the same amount of money he was paid for the concert in Guyana. He was given the red carpet treatment, full royalty in place, welcomed by the president, yet no one, ERC or no one else, and yes, he's a foreigner, and yes, of course, that everyone is allowed freedom of speech. But are we seeing some sort of a contradictory approach of this type of behavior within the society?
Well, thank you, Mr. Singh. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Jonas spoke for the law, Dr. Campbell for business. I hope the expectation is that I'm speaking for God, because you're asking me here to pronounce on the spiritual part or make this comparison. First of all, I like to speak to the minister and the commissioner very quickly. I will not question anybody's maturity or authenticity, but I'll certainly say that the longer you keep this issue in the public gaze, the more acceleration you get, the more traction you get. And I think, given where we are in the middle of June, and we've got a date somewhere coming up, 14 and 1 and that business, the longer you can keep the Mr. Wharton, Baby Skello's issue bubbling with an elections commissioner weighing in, admittedly a lawyer. I've never heard him speak on anything outside of elections. And the Honorable Minister of Education, we thank her for the tutelage. And it's really strange, but it is inspiring to hear from these folks. Now, I think the Hindu community is being reassured that, look, we have got your back and we are not going to let this issue die. And if Mr. Baby Skello has got his reputation, his name, his time has to die, then so be it. I think that's what we are hearing here. Now, the comparison between the Hindu reaction, the government's reaction, and what happened to the Jamaican superstar, Vibes Cartel, it's interesting. It certainly is eye-opening for me, because you had the Hindu community rightly coming out and saying, we are offended. And as I wrote today in Culture, I said, on behalf of my ancestors, I am offended also. But having said that, and as a contributor, whatever you want to call me, a writer, an artist, or whatever, and a contributor here, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of conscience are things that I cherish, and I think we all cherish. So there's that delicate balance that has to be walked here with Mr. Skello and his story. Vibes Cartel, where was the Ministry of Culture then? Where was the government then? Where was the Ethnic Relations Commission then? I mean, I know it's approaching the holidays, but did they take an early holiday? School holidays. Did they take an early holiday then when Vibes Cartel came here? If Trinidad can pay him $1.3 million, and they're bad, as we just said, Guyana got I'll know, how much money did they roll out in that carpet, that red carpet, when he came here? I mean, I think I saw the president with barbecue attire on and roasting some duck or something like that. And that's part of his welcoming committee. This guy was treated very, very sweetly, most likely treated sweetly in the pocket. Nobody said anything, despite, including me, ladies and gentlemen out there in the audience. We did not say anything, and I am a little chagrined about that when Mr. Cartel thought it fit to use his pen and his skill to insult part of that Trinity that Consul Jonas is talking about, Jesus. And, he went far there. He went very, very far, and he went very low. I really think there's a double standard here. There's a lot of hypocrisy going on, but it's par for the course in this country. Different folks, different strokes. Look, the Christian community did not express any outrage, so why should the government say anything? Why should the ERC react? The Hindu community reacted, rightly, I think, and I noticed that Consul Jonas used reprehensible and businessman Campbell used I'm going to try another one just to show my versatility. Repugnant. I am revolted by this, but the fact of the matter, both instances should not have found the kind of welcome that it got here and have slipped through the cracks. And somebody said, hey, listen. We got children around this place, and we got people who believe, whether they are Muslims or Hindus or Christians, and let's hold a line here. And that didn't happen, and I think that's to our deficit.
Yeah. So Ravi Singh posted, Tim already explained this, the law versus political grandstanding. Okay, so let's move on a little. I wanted to just outline the goals again for Globespan, a platform that wants to help building a society that is much more informed from all sides, a society where one can change from within so as to affect changes on the outside, a society that can reason together, and a society that can work to keep hope alive. Our vision is a country where its moral and ethical compass are directed by the Word of God. Imagine a Guyana where all Afro-Indo-Amerindians and all other races value each other as equal human beings. Imagine a Guyana where her wealth becomes your wealth. So I want to shift a little now. I mean, everyone is very anxious to hear and talk about the situation that has been developing in the political landscape. I believe one of the most major one that's taken place is Miss Amanza announcing her political party today. Devin, do you have that video?
It is a bridge away from the politics of division, corruption, and favoritism towards unity, integrity, and real results. Guided by core values like service over status, courage and conscience, and transparency, Forward Guyana is ready to help lead this nation across the old divides and into a new era where leadership is about responsibility, not rank. It's about rhetoric. It's not about rhetoric rather, but it's about action. And it's about putting the country first and before party.
Dr. Campbell, I want to start off with you getting your comments on Ms. Amanza initiative. There's a lot of flux in the political landscape. There's some additional announcements that came out today and over the course of the last few weeks. There have also been some crossover from APNU PNC over into the PPP camp. And now there also talk about a couple of the AFC's individuals moving over to the APNU PNC camp. There's a political dynamics that's taken place, and the overture would be, of course, lots of criticism, lots of noise. But I want to ask you, and I want to go back to this word, political maturity. We have known 59 years of party politics. That's what we've been in. You're in the party, you toe the line, you move to everything what the party does. If you don't agree, that's it. You really cannot go out in public here, or you can't make that change. And in many cases, even from the words that's been used, if you leave your political party, join another one, you're Nimakaram and those sort of things. Before you comment on her initiative itself, are we seeing a shift in our political landscape in the sense of more individualism, or rather as opposed to party politics, Dr. Campbell?
Over the 59 years, well, we know that our parties have historically been tied to ethnicities, right? That the PPP has been seen, or maybe I can be a little stronger, has its support historically amongst Indo-Guyanese and the PNC amongst Afro-Guyanese. And Nohar, I would say that not only crossing over was frowned upon, but crossing over in the sense that you were in the party and you were crossing, be it Chandy Singh or Vincent Tika, or even your Clinton Collymore and others who were on the other side. But even if you were outside of the party and you sought to publicly lend your support to the party of which you were not, you not in that your ethnicity would normally support, there was also criticism. There was also pressure for that, and you had to stay very quiet. So an Indo-Guyanese, even if they're not in the PPP, but sought to speak out and support the PNC and vice versa, would come under significant pressure. I think that's eroding. But it's interesting. We have had a number of defectors from the PNC going in this particular cycle. Defectors from the PNC going to the PPP, defectors from the AFC going to the PPP. We have not seen anybody defecting from the PPP. I guess the resources there are so tremendous that there's no need for people to leave. But in the case of Amanza's departure from the PNC, and I was hoping that we wouldn't deal too much with this, because sometimes I'm a little bit of an insider and not commenting completely from the outside. But even as you scroll through social media today, you saw attacks on her. In particular, I noticed that James McAllister, who is a close friend of Arby Norton, launched an attack on Miss Walton. And what is interesting is that she has not left the PNC to go to the PPP, but she has left the PNC to go independent and remain and collaborate within the opposition trenches. And yet there is this criticism. So to answer your question, over the 59 years, we are now seeing greater independence in terms of, or greater movement in terms of leaving your traditional habitat and venturing out, political habitat. But it's still frowned upon, and names will be called when one attempts to do so.
Yeah, yeah. Mr. Jonas, what's your thoughts on this? Are we shifting away from the norm of what we have known our political landscape has been? Is this a new shift now? What's your thoughts on it?
It's such a difficult question, or I think the first point that Terence made is critical, and it can't be overlooked. People gloss over it and ignore it as if it doesn't exist, but it is the most fundamental aspect of this thing. That when you leave your own teepee, your own tent, you don't even have to be going over to the other tent, but you're seen as a traitor. And you're seen as a traitor by the people who believe that there should be this race loyalty, this ethnic loyalty. And those people don't recognize their own racism. The thing is that it exists at a high level, and it is insidious and it is pervasive. So as Terence says, it's not by accident that 95% of Guyanese vote race and their families vote the same, and their cousins and their brothers and their sisters all vote the same way. It's not an accident. But what you see happening is that if someone is foolhardy enough or brave enough or disillusioned and disenchanted enough to walk away from their homegrown, walk away from their ethnic brothers and sisters and go into that wilderness, there's no safe place anymore. You are seen as a traitor. You are not accepted by the other people in the other political camp. And you're really taking your fortune in your hands when you do that. So what I don't know Ms. Walton Desir very well. I've met her all 3 times. But her act was certainly courageous. I don't know what prompted it, but she has my admiration because I know that she must be aware of the response that she will get and of the consequences, but she did it anyway. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. So, Dr. Campbell, there's a post here from Ravi saying, independent lens. Dr. Campbell, your views are often appreciated. And Mr. Timothy Jonas, you'll be happy to hear that Virginia Singh is back with us, one of the trolls that you tend to. And we certainly appreciate Virginia Singh being a troll, representing special interests, certainly gives us a visibility in what they would like to say and what they're thinking. So we welcome everyone in Globespan, even if you're a troll representing special interests. Mr. GHK, I really, this Ms. Amanza bold move that is today certainly gives hope to this younger generation that you don't, if you're not in agreement, be it right or wrong, I'm not questioning the inside of what took place here. What I'm saying is that if it is that your political parties are not heading into the direction that you are aligned with, or their vision have changed, for example, if you look at particularly with the other political parties, many have said the vision of the originating of those political parties have changed. Then is it not opening the doors for us to have a more robust, much more debatable political landscape within the country? Doesn't it give rise to young people that wants to come up and have their voice and their vision known to the country? Mr. G?
I think that's looking far into the future, starting from today. And one of these days, I'm going to ask either of you 3 men one of you 3 to tell me what a troll is. I suspect it's some terrorist or troglodyte or something like that, but that's for another time. I commend Miss Amanza Walton Desir for the move she made. I join with the 2 gentlemen. These things are not done easily. I looked at, I've never seen the woman before other than in this sister, other than in the newspaper, never spoken to her or anything like that. And there is a seriousness about her there. There is some, in addition to the seriousness, I think this was deep for her. It's a momentous step, as we would say. And leaving behind what you've always known, coming out of your comfort zone. I understand that she cried. And I think those were real tears, gentlemen. And now she has to look ahead. And to your question, Mr. Singh, yes, I think a precedent of sorts has been set here. You don't have to go from the PNC to the PPP, AFC to the PNC, and in that circle, that small circle, that seems to take us nowhere other than dig a deeper hole for us. My apologies, Dr. Campbell, but I speak what I think. I call it as I see it. If she can hold to that line, yes, she's still within the opposition trenches. I think it tells other people, young ones, including and also old ones, that hey, listen, there's life after the party, or there's life beyond the party, that we can strike out on our own, we can test the uncharted territory and see where it leads, because Guyana needs the things that she called for. I heard two of the three that I heard 5 August, almost 5 August ago. Unity was said before, she said it today, and by God, we know how much we need that. Look, we are arguing over Baby Skello and Vibes Cartel. Not we, but out there. And she spoke about transparency, and we know what the lack of that has done to this country. We who live here, the three of us, it's the first for me on this program, that live here. We call Guyana our home. We have made the sacrifice to be here, because I will be so presumptuous as to speak for the other gentlemen to say that we have choices. All three of us have choices to be some other place but here. But here we are. We want transparency, we want unity, we want accountability, we want responsibility, we want maturity. And I think that her step has started out giving us that small step that can take us to give us some hope. Forget about where it takes us. We don't know. 5 years ago, a number of parties came out, some of the people knew, and look where we ended up. Look where it is. This one said they're not joining the PPP. That one said they're not joining the PNC, and we are. They are where they are, and we are where we are. So here is Amanza now, 4 3/4 years later, I think, and saying, I will take this audacious step. And for that alone, there's no turning back for her now. Whether she makes it or she's broken by it. I wish her the best, and I say, that I wish I were 10 years younger and a little bit stronger so that I could have made a bigger contribution to this country in its hour of need. There's a lot of need in this country. We've got all the assets in the world, but we look where we are. So I think an Amanza paves the way. She opens the possibilities, open our eyes to the possibilities, and that's a good start.
Thank you. Thank you. So, gentlemen, what we just did, and I just want to address this to our viewers, that instead of spending time talking about Ms. Amanza declaration of our own political party because of all the inner turbulations or inner disagreements or whatever they may be within our own political parties, what did we just try to point out, or I try to bring out, is that this is a new shift. It's, as Mr. GSK just mentioned, it could be hope that where we would have individuals that would move away from party lines and move more into vision, into goals, and into what they, from the lens they see in terms of the direction the country should be going to. I am sure there are problems within each political parties, but here we have a very bold move. And I think this is is marking of a new time for us in Guyana. I want to ask Mr. Timothy Jonas. Mr. Jonas, what would you think, or what would be your interpretation if there is something like an Amanza Mohammed ticket out there? What's your thoughts on that? What would you say?
Well, first of all, Noah, going back to what GHK talked about, and he picked on the word unity. I wish I shared his optimism. One of the problems with democracy and the operation of a democratic process is that 70% of it is marketing. It's the reason people say you can't trust politicians, because any successful politician, chances are he's willing to lie and to cheat and to fool people to win an election. So every single government that has run Guyana has talked about one Guyana. And I use that expression deliberately because that's the latest manifestation of this so-called unity advertisement that each successive government has put in. But in Guyana, no government has been about unity. Every government has been about the representation of the 50% of the population that looks like that particular government of the day. So I don't think that anything has changed. And I don't want to go down a road that I know we've gone down before and pretend that there's any reason to be more optimistic now. The AFC is a group that was created by long-standing party members from both of the large parties, Trotman, Nagamutu, that left Ramjatan, their party, and started a new party. So the same arguments and the same language that we want to use now that sounds nice and optimistic could have been used and was used then. But the end result really is the same, that by and large, the Indo-Guyanese will vote PPP and the Afro-Guyanese will vote PNC. And you ask me what takeaway I want from this. And the takeaway I want from this is the one which you know is my mantra, that any third party that can prevent either the PPP or the PNC from being a majority government will be a godsend for Guyana, because it's the only way to avoid that democratically elected dictatorial power that we see being exercised throughout the history of Guyana, except for the brief Renaissance hiatus when Ramatar had a minority government.
Yeah, yeah. So
Could I say something, Mr. Singh, before we go to your... Could I say something quickly?
sure,
You know,
sure.
if we don't have optimism, Consul Jonas, then what do we have? And I noticed at the end, you scaled away by saying, well, if we can get that third party that fulfills your mantra of this and that, I think that is a indication of optimism on your part. So we are back to where I am.
You've
And I would
just
like to see
defined
that too.
You've just defined my optimism,
Yeah,
GHK. I believe
yes.
that the only hope for Guyana is a minority government. I
Mm-hmm.
seriously and honestly believe that. And
Yeah.
that is where my optimism is, because I think it's possible. And I think it can be done as the AFC did it before.
Yeah.
And I'm holding my breath for it, because when I see it happen, I will be the first to jump in, whoever it is that is holding that third, to make suggestions and offer my help.
And Dr. Campbell,
Good.
hold that note there on optimism. I'd like to welcome Colin Singh from watching from Canada. Every week I see his name, and just want to welcome you, Colin. And I seen a very nice comment here from Miss June Cameron. The rising of third parties is a testimony of the people wanting a change. Both parties neglected the poor and disenfranchised. Dr. Campbell, some words of optimism in the changes that we are seeing taking place. And Tim kind of stayed away from the questions, but is it over ambitious to talk about any sort of a coalescing with, let's say, Ms. Amanza and Mohammed, or any of the other political parties? How do you see this all unfolding going into September 1st?
Before I attempt to answer that question, let me just, my brother GHK said there can be no turning back for Manza. But I want to remind him of Bruce Golden in Jamaica, who actually left the Jamaica Labour Party, formed his own party, I think it was the National Democratic Party, and would later return to the JLP and actually lead them to victory until he was forced to demit office. Coalitions. A lot has emerged in the public domain in the last maybe 12 hours or so. First, we had an acknowledgement that the PNC or APNU had offered the Prime Minister position that Juretta Finance, who is of the AFC, would be the prime ministerial candidate for APNU. Secondly, a news item emerged that the AFC was going cap in hand to APNU, asking for 65-35. I'm forced to add some context and some clarity to those two news items. And generally I would not speak to them, but I will speak to them briefly here, simply because I've spoken to at least 2 or 3 news agencies for today, because apparently the AFC revealed that I was the person who had made the offer of the 65-35 to them, or communicated that offer. And so I had about 2 or 3 journalists who contacted me. And secondly, because one of those journalists said that Mr. Norton himself had confirmed that the offer had been made to Juretta Finance to be the prime ministerial candidate. Long and short, across a winding road, traveling down a very winding road, about 2 weeks ago, an offer, I suggested to the AFC that I could get 65-35 and sought clarity on what other stumbling blocks might remain to a coalition. We never got a clear response. And then eventually it was said that a certain elder in the society would hold a meeting between the 2 leaders. Later, the AFC would return to me to seek clarity and to confirm that this 65-35 was indeed doable. And I verified at that point that yes, it was going to be accepted, but events had overtaken all of that, and Ms. Juretta Finance was now appointed the prime minister. Had been offered the position of prime ministerial candidate, and even as we sought to pursue coalition negotiations, it stopped on that because the AFC wanted the right to have a nominee of their choice as the prime ministerial candidate. So to answer your question, as far as AFC APNU coalition, the likelihood of anything emerging at this point is very, very low, because that key prime ministerial position, they will no longer have the option to have their own nominee. Before I go to the Amanza team, Mohammed, and so on, I want to touch briefly, Noah. I think there's something important that we're seeing happening. We're seeing people, and it points to a lack of ethics as far as I'm concerned. We've seen Asha Kisun, I think it is, sit in Parliament, continue to occupy a seat which she had agreed to give up. That's the TNM representative. We have seen Geeta Chand and Edmund continue to occupy the position of MP for the coalition, even though she has pledged support for the PPP. We're now seeing, and is it with some degree of risk, because I work with these people, especially on the opposition side, but I'm going to call it out. We're now seeing 3 members of the AFC who, one is going to be prime ministerial candidate for APNU. The other, Sherrod Duncan, had a post today saying that he has paid his dues to the AFC until 2029. But he is going to be offering his support to APNU. And I take this opportunity to call on all those in the political domain to have the strength of character and the moral and ethical compass that if you've decided that you're going to leave one party to be independent or to or to go to throw your support behind another, to actually do the decent thing and to resign and leave. I mean, at whatever cost it is to me personally, whether they're upset with me or not, the most recent post by Sherrod I found offensive. How could you say, "Hey, I'm in your party and I paid for till 2029, but I'm going to support you over there"? I think that if you want to be an actor on the political landscape of Guyana, we need people of stronger moral and ethical fiber.
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah, Dr. Campbell. I understand there's a lot of conversations that's taking place within the political parties, etc. And we certainly don't have Sherrod Duncan, and we don't have Ms. Gita here also.
yeah,
But I
yeah. But
understand what you're
I'm
trying
just
to
talking
say
about the
is that we want to
simplicity.
have a mature
Yeah,
uh, way of handling these issues,
yeah,
and certainly we all could agree on that. But I think what we're trying to point out today is that Guyana is shifting now to more of a robust political landscape where individuals are making their decisions based on their commitments or their convictions rather. And I think it's a marking for us, marking on.
yeah. But no, let me just juxtapose that quickly before I go on to the other question. Amanza has decided to leave the PNCR. She wrote a letter. She says, "I'm out," and she left. This sitting from, as you sit in one and try to have a foot in the other. To my mind, it is offensive and unacceptable to me. You did ask about whether we will see coalitions being formed um, between an Amanza and Team Mohammed. I think it remains the case that Team Mohammed is under sanctions, and I'm just giving this from an external point of view. That Amanza seemingly has very close relations with the ABC EU countries, and so I I am skeptical about how such a coalition between Amanza and Team Mohammed, or Team Mohammed and any other player, including the AFC, um, will operate. And maybe it is possible, if Team Mohammed is not in a position of dominance, but that in itself may not be acceptable to Team Mohammed. So, the path forward is, listen, if I were a political journalist, this would be a fascinating time for me.
Yeah,
But to be a political pundit and try to figure out, how
yeah,
these things are going to land, I know for sure discussions are taking place between everyone right now.
yeah.
But how they're going to land, it's hard for me to say.
Lots of uncertainty. I agree with you. Mr. GHK, Mr. Jonas talks many times in practically each one of these programs how detriment winner takes all politics has been. Mr. Jonas, am I misquoting you in any way?
No, not at all, Noah.
You've
Thank you.
always looked back into our history and look at current situation. We just mentioned a few weeks ago, a 1.3 trillion dollar budget was passed, and 3 months later, there's another request for some 50 something billion dollars. That does not happen in the business world. A CEO getting a request 3 months after, if Dr. Campbell was given as a businessman getting that request, he would fire his CFO. But going back to my point, what I was trying to make is that Timothy Jonas spoke a lot about winner takes all politics. Are these opportunities here now that's availing itself, be it Amanza Mohammed or Amanza someone else, Mohammed someone else? We have Anuk out there as well. So that where we as Guyanese who have been quiet, the Guyanese that have not been making the noises, who are not on the social media, making all the different comments and making noises really. Is this an opportunity for these Guyanese to look for within and assess the situation to see how best they could encourage this way forward or a new way forward. Mr. GHK?
Are we capable of doing what you're asking us? That's the question. Are we capable? Do we have it within us to take that step that goes away from the PPP and the PNC? I notice, I think, and pardon me if I am misquoting you, Council, and Mr. Singh, but definitely you, Mr. Singh, spoke about this shift. This shift. Is it a shift with the feet still in the same place? Is it a basketball shift, a head fake that we are having here? And that really is just momentary. I am asking myself this because for us to get away from the winner take all environment that we have, you're going to have to sweep either the PNC or the PPP away. And as much as I'm loath to say it, that ain't going to happen. It's not happening this cycle. Maybe because the momentum and the introduction of players, actors, as Dr. Campbell said, it, in my book, is a little late on the calendar. So I think if it was earlier and the groundwork was laid, then the disenchanted and disgruntled and disillusioned in this country would have had something to go on to assess what is it we have here? What is it we have in Team Mohammed? What is it we have in Miss Amanza Walton Desir? What is it we have in X and Y and whoever else is going to come up? What is it we're going to have in possible defectors who are, well, I'm not going that way or the other way. I'm going to go my way. And I think there are two challenges here. We have to have new candidates and younger people and veterans from within the PPP and PNC who are of the character that Dr. Campbell spoke about, who have the guarded optimism of Dr. Jonas, and who have some of the spirituality that you and I possess, and that combination, and say, we are about Guyana first, even at the expense of ourselves. And we're going to put our best foot forward. We haven't seen that to this point. Do we not have that? Are we capable? Are we not capable of projecting that and meaning it deep down inside? That's where I am. But I think if this thing is given enough time, we are going to see our way. Look, you mentioned the $1.3 trillion budget, followed 3 months later by $57.5 billion. I mean, that's an outrage, but it has happened. It went through, and I think it's just a matter, because we are running out of time, that you're not going to have another one of those softs. But we want to get away from that. We want to say, look, we have thought through our budgets, we have thought through our projects, and so this is what it's going to take, and this is what we are putting before you, and we are going to be responsible for it. We have not have that, and with due respect, I think that there are people in the PNC and the AFC who are sitting back and say, if we get in power with all the money floating about there, it's we time. We gonna they're good. You think they got time to think about people out there despite all the speeches we are hearing? I'd like to touch before I go on the Amanza Team Mohammed question that you've asked. Somebody sent me the clip of her presentation today. First time I heard her. And the question was posed to her. What about yourself and a possible coalescing? And she said, I have met Mr. Mohammed once, but I still have to know his values. And I found that one fascinating in terms that the door was not slammed shut. Sanctions or no sanctions. The door was slightly ajar, and that could mean something. Yes, I hear about ABC, EU, and all of that, and I accept that. I agree with that. But our politics is in a state of, it's moving now. There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts here. And look, I'm going to introduce something here. Miss Amanza has relations or some sort of connection, rapport with the ABCEU folks. They look upon her, I think, with some degree of appreciation. I've asked myself, yes, there is some unhappiness within the PNC and by her from her within the PNC, but is there some other impetus here? I've looked at Mr. Mohammed going to Barbados and meeting with whom he met, and I'm saying, what else could be involved here? Look, the PPP is so corrupt that even the people in the State Department are repulsed by what they see and they know. And if we think a handful of low-hanging fruit is big stuff here, imagine how much more those folks know. Imagine how much more intelligence they have on many others, going right up to where they have to go.
Okay,
So
Mr. Chair.
this is not good for this country, and I think the stage is ripe for maybe, with the blessing of the US, for some new candidates really making inroads.
Yeah. So, Mr. GHK, I'm a little puzzled, but I think I'm going to have to try to figure this out because we have been dealing with the political establishment with winner takes all politics. Now we have new entrants, be it Amanza, be it Mohammed, be it the new guy that's leading with Anok. And yet somehow we are looking at it in a sense of doubt, not being open-minded and I do have your 12, you wrote an article pointing out 11 things these new political parties would have to present themselves in. I guess what I'm trying to say is that we, as Guyanese, have been around for this 59 years. And in order for us to see a change, we have to start to recognize if there is a change and have an open mind towards it. Don't matter who it is that is taking those initiatives. I want to shift to Mr. Timothy Jonas. And Mr. Jonas, I'm
No
not,
harm. No harm.
yes,
Just 1 second. It
sure.
would be remiss of me because after our last program, former Minister David Patterson reached out and to point out that in relation, we had a lot of discussion about third parties and minority government, which is where this particular conversation started. And he pointed out that even if, and I think it's something that we miss, that even if there's a minority government, legislation will still require presidential assent. And that in the 2011 to 2015 program, there is something we didn't deal with. And Tim may want to respond because that in the 2011 to 2015 period, there was legislation that was sent to the president's desk that had not been signed by Parliament. So he cited that as a limitation, even in the case of within the current architecture of a minority government, that the opposition parties may come together and pass legislation, and the president may not give his assent. So I promised that I would share it as a discussion point, and so I'm doing so at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think Timothy Jonas has mentioned that a few times, reference to President Donald Ramotar administration. There were
But we didn't
lots.
discuss it last week, so he was
No, we
listening and he was
didn't. We didn't.
concerned.
But yes,
Yeah,
that was pointed out also by a gentleman from the West Coast, Demerara, to
yeah,
me, that we were discussing choosing between evils, and
yeah.
my point was that is there such a thing as choosing between two evils? Evil is a evil. And to his point, though, he was saying to me that if you don't, you may have an administration or a stalemate government. So yeah, we have circled around that, and maybe that's something we could have a more robust discussion on. That what if you do have a minority government and the president doesn't assent to bills, is the country will be at a stalemate. But I want to go to a different point that I was getting. So when I mentioned about Miss Manza and Mohammed or anyone else coalescing together, I was sort of circling to a point that where Dr. Bisram mentioned to me last week or a couple of weeks ago that the the Attorney General is holding to the word of the law regarding the list. And I believe what he said is that you couldn't be on two lists at the same time. You have to have individuals. Now, the backdrop of this is that we are looking for a new political landscape. We want to be able to have a visibility into a future where we have multiple discussion, multiple robust political environment. If that is the case, and you have these small parties, Timothy Jonas, and they're not able to generate these lists, these amount of trustworthy people that wouldn't resign in public and embarrass their political party per se, or is it not creating an environment by recommending that one person could only be on a specific list, not duplicate in another list? Is it not pushing towards having more coalition, small party coalition? Um, could you give us a little insight on that?
And I think this is where we go back to the essence of Mr. Barnum's constitution and the unfairness that was perpetuated. So let's take everything that we just mentioned, that Terence spoke about, you spoke about, to show how by ordinary and almost invisible sleight of hand, the government of the day gets to control everything. The Constitution has this provision about the president assenting to legislation. So immediately the independence of Parliament is undermined. And that was a very clever thing that Mr. Barnum needed. So that if he didn't like anything that the Parliament passed, he doesn't sign it off. So you keep control, you keep central control. And when I say central, on your own personal desk. Now, that really is double-edged, because if I hand you 5, 6, 7 bills that have been passed by Parliament and you got to sign it and you delay, the next time you need a budget, you don't get your budget because government has to operate. And before you pass your first budget, if the opposition was a professional body that did their job properly, before your first budget came around, you would have a dozen amendments. I have a dozen in my head right now, already before Parliament, to be passed before the next budget. So enormous pressure can be brought to bear. Right now, there is zero pressure because the government controls Parliament. And as GHK said, one budget not enough, you come and approve a second, you approve a third. The other day I heard Mr. Jagdeo talking about opening an institution with 0% loans. The two businessmen on this forum don't need to say anything more about that concept as soon as you say it. But you can do it if you control Parliament and the money. So the largest problem is that government control of Parliament. And that's how Mr. Barnum did it. The second thing is the difficulty that was created by the system for third parties. Because as you say, for a party to contest an election, they have to get a couple hundred signatures supporting them from at least 6 regions. They have to present a list of 6 to 5. They have to jump through hoops that are very difficult for a startup organization. Very difficult. And that is designed to keep them out and to maintain the status quo with the two parties that are there. So at every step, you find yourself faced by a system that is designed to perpetuate our Afro party and our Indo party. And for me, the reason I did not answer your question, Ohar, specifically about the Mohammeds, or specifically to say these are good people or these are bad people in respect of any third party, is that if the status quo is either the Afro party or the Indo party, then the status quo is unacceptable. And anyone who supports either the Indo or the Afro party, and I don't care what your race is, what your ethnicity is, you are perpetuating an unacceptable status quo. So any third party must be preferable. You see, I see people saying, we've tried third parties, can't trust third parties. Nonsense. Because the answer to that is, therefore, you are trying to justify your blind allegiance to a party that has barefacedly tried to rig elections, or your blind allegiance to a party that is barefacedly corrupt. So where's the trust? The only possible answer in the rules of the game that we have now, with our presidential assent, with our hoops that a third party has to jump through just to be at the table election time, just to be present, with the dictatorial powers of winner take all, with the evidence of corruption on one side, corruption on the other side, is to say we reject ethnic politics. We identify both parties as perpetuating ethnic politics, and therefore we're not going there. So whether we like the third party, don't like the third party, good, bad, or ugly, you have to try with the third party just to ensure that the winner take all doesn't happen. There's no other way around it.
Yeah, so Timothy Jonas, if I could just say that, yeah, to your point, you're saying you got to continue to try. We have to be able to continue to look to a different way forward. The same thing is not working for us. I just want we had one comment here, and I think it was Mr. Lomarsh Rupnarain. At the last point, we need a political party from the Guyanese diaspora in connection with the ground that is connected with the ground in Guyana. Just another comment coming in. Dr. Campbell, going back to your concern about minority government, etc., some of the biggest democracy in the world have been ruled by coalition government, be it India, Canada, and I named quite a few weeks ago in this program. Even our neighbor now, Suriname, basically now has a coalition government. Can you see from your lens, your visibility of us moving away from where we have been, that we constantly talk about the two-party system? Can you see a pathway towards some sort of a coalition government going forward so we don't have the winner take all, we don't have all the things that we keep discussing year after year, we keep complaining year after year about? Please, Dr. Campbell, give us your comments.
No, I think that we could have a situation of a minority government in September. It's possible. I want to assign a percentage to it, but it's entirely possible. And I think based on
Dr. Campbell, can I just
PPP
interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah.
I should also say to you, many times when I ask my questions, it's not in the context of keeping us confined to September 1st. The vision for us is a future. A Guyana, 5
No,
years, 10 years, is a blink of an eye of a nation. So
no,
take us to,
I was pointing. Yeah. No. I was just pointing September 1st might actually open a door. Because the PPP's experience from 2011 to 2015, my understanding is that there were discussions at that time about bringing in, I think they cooperating with the AFC in a coalition government. And this is not, you know, our constitution. One of the problems for us here in Noir is that our constitution kind of it stops coalitions occurring after it doesn't make it easy for coalitions to occur after the elections. So once there's an election, as in the Suriname case, you could have shared governance in the sense that two parties can come together. The minority government can then say to one of the third parties, it may be a third party or one of the third parties, you know, we can share the government, and these are the ministries and so on. I think we're getting closer to that stage because I think 2011 to 2015 signaled that winner take all. 2011 to 2015 was an attempt to have winner take all, even by a minority government. And I don't think that will occur again. So we might be, the reason I refer to September 1st, we might be very close to a Suriname type situation, closer to it than we actually think.
yeah. Okay, thank you, Dr. Campbell. And Mr. GHK, some hopes here for some sort of a new window opening for us with Guyana going forward?
Well, look, for the first time since I'm back here, what I have a strong sense of is that people want something different. they want change, but I don't know how much of a change or how much of a sacrifice they are prepared to get that change. In other words, am I prepared to abandon the tribal bandwagon? Am I prepared to make that leap, take that leap of faith? I went out publicly in 2015 and said I'm voting for David Granger. And I did in 2020, in 2019. And I did. And I'm saying now that I'm not even considering voting. And that might be a blasphemous too, right? But that aside, that aside, um, how genuine are we in terms of the change that we want? Look, so you're living over there, Dr. Campbell. I know some things about you, and you folks know a little bit about me, my contact. We do everything to get that change when we go out of here, or to go from here to there in another territory, not a country. Yet here we seem to be stuck. One of the recurring themes of this conversation has been 59 years, 59 years, 59 years. And it certainly it rings because that's where we have been. We've gone to minority government and the AFC. We've seen the new faces. We saw Mr. Trotman and Mr. Ramjatan break ranks and form the AFC. Said, hey, we're going to go places. People are looking back now and say, well, if they didn't do this, well, hindsight is perfect. I think that I heard Mr. Jonas, and normally philosophically I agree with him, but practically I don't. And he said, we've got to give this thing a chance. So if we're going to look to say, oh, got you there, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen as quickly and as robustly as it should if we are looking for that change that involves non-PPP, non-PNC, and I must say non-AFC too, because we're going to have to give something new and some new people a chance to show what they can deliver past the table, past the speeches, past Facebook, in how they can make life different in this country, so that we want to stay here because we believe there is something in it for us, that all of us have a share in it. That is not happening right now. And I don't know how much different that is going to be if there were to be a change of government from one big one to the other big one. Some new faces and some new idea, new energy to bring about the unity and transparency and all those lovely things that we talk about.
Yeah.
I think that we are seeing the shift, and I'm going to borrow your word. We're seeing that shift, and I think it's the first step. It's the start, and looking beyond September, we can be guardedly optimistic. There I go again for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mr. GHK. And certainly, I mean, a future without the PPP, PNC is not in works. I think it's having the main parties involved and the smaller parties. Just a few comments I want to read. Mr. Harry Singh mentioned National Front government is the only way forward. Reason is Guyana is too divided. Mr. Ravi Singh disagree with you there, Dr. Campbell. And then Mr. Harry Singh came back and said, Mr. Campbell is on point, very honest and smart guy. So you're getting some props here tonight, Dr. Campbell. Timothy Jonas, if I remember you correctly, we've never met each other, by the way, in person. I've never met Timothy Jonas in person. But you were trekking the streets of Guyana back and forth during the 2020 election. You put up a soldier type of fight in terms of what was unfolding during that time. We are less than 3 months away from our election mode, September 1st. And there's situations that are happening in the year. We had a few weeks ago, or a month ago, some acid was thrown at children. The police have not found those culprits yet. which is very concerning because the police tends to find everything, but not those guys. We had baby Skello being jailed. Another incident that's taken place was, I believe some Jennifer Ali person was also on social media bashing the Adriana's family. The atmosphere is priming for a lot of, again, a situation where people are being pushed to their limitations so that we could possibly see a situation unfolding that none of us want to be able to have in Guyana, be it riots, be it violence in the streets, etc. Given your experience from the last election to now, how do you feel the atmosphere is? And this is really coming in close to our closing statement, really. And what would you say to the Guyanese people that we could do to avoid having a sort of an implosion within our country because of our political alignments?
No, are you asking difficult questions tonight? Okay. I know that traditionally, especially in Georgetown, which is seen as a PNC stronghold, there is always this perception by the PPP that the PNC can call people out to riot and protest and all hell will break loose. I think something has changed from that position. Certainly, APNU supporters are angry, and justifiably so, because they're seeing an increasingly disproportionate distribution of wealth. They're seeing very, very wealthy people, and very few of them look like the APNU supporters. So there's grounds to be upset. I don't think that there's anyone in APNU who can galvanize the supporters the way that in their days Burnham, White, Green could have done it. I don't see anyone with that charisma. And I do know that the increasingly large middle class, well, I say large loosely, so it's no longer minuscule as it was in Burnham's time. More and more people have, a house and a car and a family that they want to protect. So there's an increasing number of people who do not want to see any kind of unrest. So yes, emotions are afraid, but I believe and I hope, certainly I hope, that the elections will be conducted in an orderly way. And it is for GCOM to demonstrate transparently for everyone that the result of the election is tabulated in a fair way. And once that's done, I think we can get past our fears. And it's only if we can get past our fears that we can pretend to be a truly democratic country.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Dr. Campbell, I mentioned of the atmosphere being prime. Mr. Jonas mentioned that he doesn't see the charisma within the other side that could bring people out in the streets and certainly going back to the Adriana issue, I was having a conversation with one of my Afro-Guyanese brothers yesterday, and he mentioned to me that, it was really symbolic when this situation unfolded with Adriana, how many Indo-Guyanese came out too, until to the point when it started to get violent, they started retracted, they moved away from it. Given all of that, put in all of that, Adriana issue, baby Skello, the acid on the children, what would you say to the people of Guyana, Dr. Campbell, that could be able to take us into a new way of entering election, understanding the issues that we have had on hand, and how could we avoid having a disruptive process?
Well, I think in this election, I mean, there's great frustration that I sense amongst, especially opposition supporters. There is a desire for change. However, in addition to what Tim said about leaders lacking the charisma to lead mass protest, I think we must give the opposition leader some credit, for he has himself tried to avoid those large protests because he has always felt that they present an opportunity for infiltration by violent elements. So I think the two things together um, reduce the risk of post-election or violence around election time. The one big risk that I see is in the tabulation. We've always made a mess of it. It's always been days before we can get a result, and delay in getting that result raise fears that somebody is cooking the books. So before I even call on Guyanese to do everything possible to ensure that this is a peaceful election, I think we need to call on GCOM to make sure that its systems are robust to detect those who may want to vote and are not entitled to vote. I'm a little worried about that. And more so that the tabulation is done accurately and swiftly. And going forward, Nohar, I think immediately the time is too short. But from September 2nd, we must hold GCOM accountable, and it must implement the technology, biometrics, and so on, so that the next election, people will have less fear about a free and fair election the next time. There were reports that were prepared at the end of 2020 that highlighted deficiencies, and most of those were ignored and nothing done in 5 years, and that is unacceptable. I know we're coming to the end, and quickly, I just want to say that in our discussion, as we talked about a reinvigorated democracy, we did not even briefly address the heroic case of Christopher Ram that he has raised about trying to allow individuals to run in regional elections and for the National Assembly without having to join a list, which would overcome some of the limitations that we raised during these discussions.
Absolutely.
And Guyana needs more heroes like Chris Ram.
Yes. Guyana needs all of its heroes going post September 1. But Mr. GHK, to Dr. Campbell's point, and giving credit to the opposition leader, when I heard Baby Skeller was arrested, my mind went to another set of riots going to be out there, justifiably so or not. But what we've seen, and going back to the most recent one with Adriana, a lot of the violence was focused on the Chinese businesses. And which is not right. We certainly don't condone that in any way. Should not be any violence at all. Are you seeing some sort of a change or shift that we could be hopeful for? That yes, and Dr. Campbell mentioned about keeping the elements out that would take advantage of a mass protest, etc. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, could we be able to have a hope, some hope that will lead up to a peaceful election and somehow settle and agree to the outcome?
I agree with Dr. Campbell that the opposition leader, whom I have heard say, he said, I know radical and I know what it is to be on the street. And certainly he does. And there's a time for that, he said, and now is not the time. I know for a fact, having spoken to them, some of his people don't agree with him at all on that. But I don't know if Mr. Jonas and Dr. Campbell have elevated to that stage where they helicopter to work and back home and all of that and their businesses. But this is a country, despite its growing middle class, a house and a car, don't forget a mortgage and a car loan, right? They it's still sharply divided between the haves and the have-nots. The haves are few, and the have-nots are too many. And that's a problem. The have-nots are seething because we are close. We know everybody's story here. Everybody know everybody else's story. In the village, in the town, in wherever. And what is happening, the distribution of the patrimony, and I'm not talking about oil alone, has been so blatantly in the face and unfair, and those who are left out, I do not know how they can look post September 1st and say, I am steering uphill at 5 more years of this. I am hoping that, yes, GCOM, which is going into this thing with a lot of negative baggage on its head, that it can come up with not maybe a same-day result, but within a matter of a day or two. Having said that, look, our country is at that place where we cannot afford to degenerate into violence, to let our baser passions take hold and block up the place. We have to remember now that we have foreign investors here, and they are here by the droves, and that counts for something. So I think that investor climate will have a significant impact on reaction in this country leading up to and post elections. I think those things will come. I say that we'll have our skirmishes and we'll have our flares, but they will not be enduring.
Certainly that is hopeful. Mr. Ravi Singh posted, and Tim has proven his loyalty to democracy in Guyana. We could simply go back to 2020. Gentlemen, there was one more topic I wanted to touch, but we ran out of time. Dr. Bisram, a couple of weeks ago, put forth an initiative, a Guyana American Alliance, calling for Guyana to become one of the territory of the United States, certainly up for discussion in the future. And I would like to add to part of that discussion is Mr. Christopher applying towards independent candidates being able to contest the election. We had a great discussion. I really want to thank Devin Bissoon. One of the good things about the Globespan discussion is that we talk with each other, we agree to disagree, and certainly you're able to get insights and opinions from different angles. And I think that's a very important part of our growth, and whereby it'll give us information that we could assess from within and somehow change from within first before we could start affecting the change from the outside. I want to thank each one of my guests, Timothy Jonas, who's been on this program, I believe, for probably over 5 years now, Dr. Terence Campbell, Mr. GHK, Mr. Devin Bissoon, and everyone else. Thank you, guys. Thank you, viewers. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Noah.
Good night.
It was a pleasure.